Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. It's another new Abyss 12, and you know what that means? Another Abyss 12 completion video of some sorts. Woo! So this Abyss 12, as usual per Genshin Impact patch cycles, it's getting harder and harder, and normally it takes me maybe about half an hour to an hour to figure out a team to beat the Abyss 12 when it comes to 4-star only. This one took me about 1.5 to 2 hours, which is way longer than it usually takes. I'm going to show you guys the teams that I used, and I'm also going to show you guys the runs, of course. We're going to start off with a very free-to-play friendly run, and then after that, we're going to take a look at a quick day one Arlecchino Speedrun. Now, the speedrun's far from optimized, but anyway, let's first talk about the teams that we're going to be using. So the first team for my 4-star only team is going to be a Thoma version team. Thoma is built with, I guess, not that much energy recharge. I did actually struggle a bit with his energy, so in hindsight, I probably should have given him more energy recharge, but it is what it is. He has a Contain Cross Spear, 4-piece Flower of Paradise Lost, along with triple Elemental Mastery stats and some energy recharge substats. Nothing too crazy, very typical stuff for a version Thoma. We have Yao Yao to keep this team alive because, trust me, we need this team to stay alive. And a 4-piece Tenacity, which is pretty useless on this team, but whatever, not a big deal. Yao Yao is here to heal and apply a bit of Dendro, and she does a great job at both of those. Up next, we have DMC, our main source of Dendro application, and I definitely prefer DMC in this case over Kalei, thanks to her much larger burst radius. Her elemental burst, when you infuse it with Hydro, makes it much larger and much easier to hit enemies that are further spread out. Finally, we have the Water Boy Xingqiu, just whatever stats, mainly energy recharge, a little bit of crit, in order to just give him good uptime to apply Hydro in order to get those Burgeon bursts, explosion things. So, second team, we have right here, we have an Chevrus overloaded team. And I built these characters pretty well. We have the Catch, Xiangling with just the standard Emblem of Sever Fate build, and she's at Constellation 6. We also have Bennett, and Bennett is one of the MVPs for sure for this, and he has the 4-piece Thundering Fury, and you guys will see why soon enough. And Constellation 6 I have for Bennett, which also helped in this run as well. So for me, the Thundering Fury outweighed the 20% Noblesse Oblige buff, attack buff that this team gets. So he has decent amount of energy recharge. Up next, we have Fischl. Very standard stringless Fischl, and I think I actually have the wrong build on her. Oops, yeah, I have Elemental Mastery on her. I should not have Elemental Mastery, I should have attack percent. In hindsight, I forgot that I swapped her over to Elemental Mastery timepiece, but it is what it is. We still completed it despite a suboptimal build for Fischl, so just keep that in mind. And we have Chevrus just built with the standard Favonius HP percent build in order to give her team attack as well as some energy recharge for some burst up time. And she is at Constellation 6, so that definitely helped me out. There's no question about it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the runs, and I'll commentate and give you guys some advice. Starting off, we have the triple Magu Kenki, and you guys, if you've dealt with these, it's been a long time since these guys have been in the Abyss, I believe, but they're back and they're as annoying as ever. The Cryo one likes to really run off into the distance. You can see that my team, some characters are already almost dead thanks to getting hit and stuff, but that's why Yao Yao is here. She is great at healing, and you generally want to try to keep them together. Fortunately, Burgeon does have great AoE, but you know, these guys, they are very dangerous, so having some kind of sustain or shield is very helpful here. And also, you're going to be freezing yourself a lot with Xingqiu, but it is what it is, not a big deal. You can see here that every time that I use Traveler's Burst, I try to follow it up with Xingqiu's Burst, or to at least touch it with Xingqiu's little water orbital swords, so that way it doesn't get blown up by Thoma's Elemental Burst. Because if it touches Pyro, Dendro Traveler's thing will explode, and there you go. The top half is not the difficult part, it is the bottom half that is a big pain. And this Chevrolet's Overloaded team doesn't actually make this part easier, but I brought this team for the other chambers, which this team actually does help a lot against the other chambers. But for this one, it's really annoying, and you guys will see why. Overloaded, not the best reaction when it comes to this. Anyway, these two beefy samurai guys, they're not too beefy, but basically, you want to kill them at the same time or very close to each other, because the one remaining one, when one dies, the other one will heal up. So when it heals up, you're going to waste pretty much an entire rotation just because of that. And I'm trying to hunt down these Pyro Fatui guys since I don't have a way to break their Pyro shields once they get that up. So we're going to finish them off. And unfortunately, we got stuck in the ice cage from the Mirror Maiden. She also has the water bubbles too, but you can see Xiangling's Elemental Burst just shredding through them. And right now we just have Official, who is incredible for single target DPS. And we also have Xiangling's Burst back up as well. So we're just going to finish off the Mirror Maiden. Nothing too special there. And now this is where Overloaded is really not beneficial, because you can see the Fatui Angels are just constantly bouncing around. But fortunately, we have an entire minute that, despite the super annoying, Overloaded knocking them way out of Bennett's circle, we should be able to handle it. And well, spoilers, I'm uploading this because we did manage to handle it. But yeah, anyway. Overloaded, there it goes. Just do your typical stuff. I don't really know what these agents do, but they are pretty durable, unfortunately. And they just have a lot of hit points, and it doesn't help when you're not really able to hit them properly. And they also like to just stand around, which is super annoying. Okay, the Wind one likes to stand around, and this Cryo one, I believe, likes to dash back and forth constantly. She gets possessed by the weekly boss child and just starts dashing back and forth. One of the worst mechanics and absolute worst things to deal with, but not too big of a deal. We had plenty of extra time thanks to just this team being overall a really powerful team, despite Overloaded being super annoying. Now, sorry, as usual, I'm yapping too much because, well, I mean, you guys are watching this video, so you're watching me yap. But anyway, here I'm saving Toma's Burst and just doing a couple little bitty burgeons here and there with his skill, because Toma really doesn't apply much pyro at all. And you really need a lot of pyro application. Well, not a lot, but you need some to get through the Capellas's Cryo Shield here. So I saved his burst specifically just to damage the gauge and to get through the Cryo Shield from this enemy quicker. Now, I believe you can also use Uxie or Numa. I'll double check and I'll tell you guys which one you need after this in terms of breaking his shield instantly. But it will do his shield 3 times in a row, I believe. Within roughly, I think, 15-20 second intervals of each other. Now, anyway, this team doesn't have great single target DPS, so it is what it is. And you can see here that right now, without the initial, pyro gauge from Toma's Burst, he's really struggling to break that shield. So yeah, you pretty much need a way to break this thing's shield, or else you're just going to be watching it dance all day. And Toma, while not the best, is able to barely get the job done. And the single target DPS of a Virgin team is also not great, but fortunately we are able to complete this within enough time to still 3-star this Abyss Chamber, thanks to the Chevrolet's Overloaded team being, pretty darn goated. So anyway, I wait for these guys to do their thing so that way they don't get knocked all around by Overloaded. Absolutely not necessary, but, I just found it to make my life a little bit easier in this case. And now they're just getting bounced all over the place. Super annoying, but it's pretty funny to see. And their invisibility is pretty much useless because they keep getting knocked around. So yeah. Anyway, now we have the 2 Pokemon trainers. You guys know how they work. I think the dude, the bigger guy, approaches you more than the girl does. So I tend to like to stand next to the girl, so that way the dude will go and try to punch you in the face, which doesn't work out for him because it just brings them together. So that way you can just burst them down. Of course, if you defeat their Pokemon, they get knocked down and they take a lot of additional damage. So anyway, the 2 Abyss Lectors, you can see I ran over to this corner so that way I could group them a bit, because otherwise it is very inconsistent to group them. Of course, you can use Venti or other methods. But since obviously I'm not using 5-star characters, we don't have this option. So anyway, now that they are grouped, they are hugging each other nice and tight, which allows us to knock them both down. And Pyro and Cryo, as well as I believe Dendro, do really well against these shields, and this is why I brought Thundering Fury Bennett. And this is super annoying. You're going to get knocked around a bunch because I suck at iframing these things. I don't really know their timings and stuff, and there's 2 of them. But Thundering Fury Bennett will allow you to just spam his elemental skill like crazy, thanks to it reducing the cooldown of his elemental skill upon an electro reaction, just like that. Shouldn't have used Bandit's Burst there, but it is what it is. So next one is, well, because the last chamber I struggled a few times, I was just like, whatever, I don't care about energy management. We're just going to go into 12-3-1 with no energy. Who cares? And ended up working out, but this first one has 4 entire waves. No joke, 4 entire waves of enemies. I don't ever recall seeing 4 waves of enemies in Abyss 12 prior, but you know, I bet there has been one in the past, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. So anyway, you can just blow up the Fatui, the chunky Fatui guys, no problem. Now you should really focus on the Eremite guy because he has more hit points, but for some reason I kind of try to distribute the damage between the Samurai guys. Not the way to go with this, but not a big deal. Just blow them up with Burgeon. Nothing special here. Honestly, this part isn't that interesting, but we have, okay, so these 2 robot guys, there is a little tip. Try to get them to both face you in the same direction, because when they get knocked back, they don't get knocked back between, like, you know, away from you. They get knocked back based on the direction that they're facing. If they're facing left, they will get knocked back to the right. So if they're both facing you, you're able to knock them both back in the same direction, which helps a ton in terms of, you know, grouping them together, because otherwise they're going to get split up and you're not going to have a good time. So just one quick tip about grouping these 2 mech dudes with things that actually knock them back. Now, up next we have the Excavator along with the dog, and I make a pretty big mistake here. I think I accidentally blow up Traveler's Burst, which is not ideal. But, you know, we're not here to play perfectly. We are here to play for our, what is it, 30 Primo Gems a month for the additional stars that we get. Anyway, yep, you see there, I just blew it up on accident. RIP Dendro Traveler's Burst. But hey, looks like we still managed to get through this. I think I used Yao Yao mainly, relying on, oh, no, we got, yeah, I mainly rely on Yao Yao to apply some Dendro here in order to finish off the last couple of mobs. Finally, we have the Inquisitor Baptist dude. Now, this guy's pretty annoying because it has 3 different elemental shields. I believe it starts with a Pyro Shield, and Pyro Shields, Hydra's the best for it, but Electro will also do fine. Cryo's not great, but it can chunk through it. But you can see Fischl just applies a ton of Electro as well, so that helps a ton in terms of this. Now, right before his shield breaks, I start setting up the rotation, so that way I can do quite a bit of damage while it is getting up and down. And the Cryo Shield's obviously just going to go down instantly to all this Pyro as well as Electro. Now, this part, I probably could have, you know, busted his shield somehow before it teleported away, which is really annoying, wasting a bit of rotation time. But this team, great single target DPS. The Inquisitor Baptist dude doesn't actually have a lot of raw health. He mainly has just a ton of elemental gauges in his shields, as we can see. So there you go. Managed a 9-star. It took me a lot of experimentation to get the right distribution of characters on each side. Okay, here's a quick day 1 speedrun. Now, you can see here that I open up with a Kazuha E cancel, so that way the Cryo Kenki will just stand in place, which will allow me to actually one-shot all of them, but I missed the one-shot, and I didn't want to crit fish because my wife is getting home in about 15 minutes, so I don't have time to, unfortunately, do more speedruns. But anyway, now I'm sure there is a much faster way to clear this one, even with this setup, but what I really liked about this speedrun in particular was the creative use of Charlotte, because Charlotte's cryo application is so unique and actually perfect for this. Anyway, we're doing Constellation 2, dash cancel to wipe the first wave, use her Element Burst to wipe the second wave, use Kazuha to group these robots up, so that way Arlecchino's first couple basic attacks will finish it off, then use the AoE slashes of the rest of hers to finish off the last wave. So, let's take a look at a couple additional tips. You guys can see the Kagu Menkis are just a bit dangerous, but besides that, just try to keep them together. You can keep retrying a few times until they do kind of stick together, because sometimes they'll just kind of spread out and your run is really going to struggle if that's the case. Now, in terms of the second half, there's not too much to say, but it is a very thick chamber. As you can see in this chart, 12-1 has a 12-1 has a massive 8.4 million HP pool, but it is of course very AoEable with the Kagumenkis having 3 million hit points between them, but you can of course hit all three of them at the same time, therefore making their HP pool much less effective. Now these two local legend agents, they have about 1.4 to 1.5 million HP each, and as you can see they are not only very annoying, they are also very thick to take down. Now, in terms of 12-2, this is where it gets a bit more interesting. The nemesis of Capelli, so you can see that it would pop up that cryo shield, which is very annoying, and it is, I believe, invincible while the shield is up. So you have two ways to really deal with it. You can either break it with Pyro, and Electro does okay too, or you can use an Uxia attack. So a character like, I believe, Irina can do Uxia attacks, and whoever else, Lynette, there are some others that do Uxia attacks. Navia as well, so those types of teams will be able to instantly break its shield with a Uxia aligned attack. And over here you can see the Abyss Lecter, the lightning one, has a very thick Electro shield, and you can use either Pyro, Cryo, or Dendro to break through shield. And you can see that I specifically used a Bennett Thundering Fury, a specialized build that's designed to just output a ton of Pyro Gauge as much and as fast and as free to play friendly as possible, especially with this Constellation 6. You will be able to chew through these things' shields in no time. As for these other ones, there's really nothing that remarkable to say about them. And finally for 12-3, having a bit of Pyro against the Fatui Cryo Gunners is helpful, but I think most players will be able to kill them before they really become a big problem with their cryo shields. And yeah, now in terms of the Quidditis Baptist guy, he does fire, then cryo. He does pyro, then cryo, then electro shield in that order. Some way to break the fire shield like hydro or electro. And finally, pyro will be able to shred through both the cryo as well as electro shield. Clearly we can see that they're favoring pyro for both sides of Abyss 12, with pyro being able to break through the shield on this thing, being able to break through the cryo shields on this thing, as well as being able to break through 2 of the 3 shields on the Inquisitus Baptist and to break through the Electro shield on the Abyss Lecter. And we can see that nothing besides the Pyro shield on the Inquisitus guy resists Pyro. So yeah, oh yeah, and we have this Fatui Pyro Slinger who also resists Pyro, but they are squishy enough. You can see that I just focused them down before they got their Pyro shields up. Now I forgot to mention that right now the Abyssal Moon heavily favors Pyro, because anytime a Pyro reaction is triggered on an enemy, all elemental resistance is decreased by 30% for 4 seconds. So you want to keep on hitting the enemies with reactions that decrease their, or with pyro related reactions to decrease all their resistances by 30%. So yeah, let me know what you think about this Abyss 12. Personally, I found it the most challenging so far in terms of Fontaine. The elemental shields were absolutely crazy, and kind of the pyro requirement on both halves made it much more difficult to figure out what allocation of characters to go for in terms of this Abyss 12. But of course, there are many ways to, I don't know, cut some bread or cut the cheese. There's many ways to slice the pie, and you guys, I'm sure, will be able to figure it out in terms of how to allocate your resources to beat this Abyss 12. And if not, check the comments below to see what other people beat this Abyss 12 with, and perhaps that will help you draw some inspiration to figure out how you can beat this Abyss 12 as well. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.